Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. T for 3. Checking the day's schedule, Maud looked forward to meeting her first-time client, Silesia. Her daily prep included the wide variety of tea blends sufficient to the day's demands. Maud called her social events pours. Modeled after the traditional Japanese tea ceremony, she aimed deeper than mere tranquility. Her delicious, blended teas reoriented her clients' views of themselves and the world. She tailored each concoction individually by adding herbs and essential oils. Every ingredient was organic and non-toxic. Of course, it was all legal. Maud acquired her skill by studying under a Peruvian shaman for a decade. Her second scheduled client called himself Ted, not his real name. Maud hadn't met him, but she knew him well. A columnist at the local newspaper, he was her most strident critic. Maud intended to reorient Ted's views, good and hard. Ted and other critics claimed Maud ran a cult. She scoffed at such descriptions. They've obviously never attended my tea parties. Clients choose to return. They're not compelled. She maintained a low public profile. Finding self-promotion distasteful, Maud didn't advertise. She didn't need to. Word of mouth brought most of her clients seeking relief from a life out of balance. They generally left happy. Critics wondered why no one in City Hall cared to lift her veil of secrecy. Maud dismissed rumors, claiming she was a close confidant of politicians and society mavens. Maud admitted to modifying the tea ceremony into something unique. Her pours were for anyone seeking to rebalance. The pours logo was a modified yin-yang symbol depicted as floating within the bowl of a bamboo spoon. She didn't tell fortunes, wasn't a guru, and didn't run a seance. Nor was she a matchmaker, though some had found love after meeting through her. That was serendipity at play, not Maud. Maud also adamantly rejected the term therapist. She firmly rejected suggestions her pours were a form of group therapy. She abhorred insinuations that she practiced without a license. As the appointed time for this day's pour approached, Maud prepared a special tea for Ted. Not knowing Silesia's needs and temperament, she waited. Her standard blends would do until she knew more. Maud resisted temptation regarding Ted. Poison was an option to which she refused to stoop. but she had prepared something special for him. Maud was confident that when Ted left the pour, his attitude would be radically different from the one he brought. With a few minutes before the pour, Maud sat in silence, with her hands folded. The bell rang. Maud opened the door to Silesia, wearing a short, strapless sundress and a broad-brimmed straw hat. Silesia thrust out her hand. "Maud? Yes, welcome to my pour." Maud waved her in and saw Ted coming up the walk in a suit and tie. She introduced herself and led them to the dedicated pour room. Silesia talked rapidly. "It's such a beautiful day. Perfect for a little tea, don't you think?" Maud nodded. Ted lagged behind, taking note of the decor and the layout of the house. Silesia continued without pausing for breath. "But it's so beautiful. A shame to spend it cooped up inside. I love going down to the river walk and watching the ducks and the boats and the birds flying overhead. The trees make such lovely shade, and each fluttering leaf responds to every slight breeze. Is there any way we can reschedule? I hate to waste the day inside." Once in the room, Maud indicated where they should sit. "Well, you're here now. We won't be all day, bright and shadowless." The pour room had no windows. No pictures adorned the walls, which had climbing vines painted on them. A ficus tree stood in one corner. A low table sat amidst plush pillows. A table beside Maud had a gas fire, teapots, space for preparation, and teacups. Silesia and Ted did a little dance, trying to decide who should sit where. Maud pointed and said, "No, Silesia there. Ted, please sit here." They sat. Silesia giggled like a little girl. Ted's face shifted between annoyance and boredom. Maud prepared the tea with bamboo utensils and served them each a cup. She said, "This first cup should relax you. Take a moment to enjoy. Sip carefully. It's hot." Silesia downed the cup in one gulp and screamed as she spit it out. She grabbed a napkin and wiped tea off herself and the table. "Wow, sorry, that was hot." Ted rolled his eyes. The first serving of tea was intended to break the ice. Maud never wanted clients to think of their poor experience as akin to riding in an elevator. They were past that. Whatever their stated purpose, Maud sensed subtle emotional currents at work. Her blends worked to rebalance each person, regardless their emotional state. Wanting the tea to bring everyone into a state of calm, she poured them another cup. She leaned toward Silesia. "Are you okay? It's hot." "Hot. Right. Got the message." Silesia blew on the cup and sipped. "Oh, this is good." Maud turned to Ted. "And how are you, Ted?" Startled from his reverie, Ted took a moment. He reined in his disdain for what he thought an elaborate charade. "This is different from the expected traditional tea ceremony." "Oh, what have you heard?" "I never tell people to expect that." "Well, to start, He pointed at Silesia. This badly dressed, classless woman is rude, won't stop talking, doesn't carry a fan. Silesia scowled and rummaged through her purse. Pulling out a battery-operated fan, she switched it on. The little propeller spun, blowing strands of her hair back. With eyes fluttering, she smiled at the breeze in her face. Giggling, she aimed it at Ted, blocking the draft with his hands. He said, "Never mind. Turn it off. Keep it to yourself." Silesia winked at Maud and, giggling, returned the fan to her purse. Ted said, "So much for tranquility. This is my point. How do you dare pretend this tattered facade is a tea ceremony? You exhibit only the shallowest grasp of time-honored rituals. This is just a load of frayed, New Age claptrap hiding behind the trappings of a traditional tea ceremony. I'm sorry, my pores have been misrepresented. Would you like more tea? I mean, where's the respect, the purity, and the reverence?" Maud held her look. After a moment, he held his cup out. He wouldn't let go when Maud tried to take it. Careful not to burn him, she refilled his cup. "It's hot, I know." He gave Silesia a stern look and brushed off his leg. Maud noticed that Silesia had begun to fidget. She declined more tea. "Silesia, tell us what brings you here," she sighed. "It's all about my roommates. They aren't pets, but they're hamsters." "Well, about 6 months ago, I was feeling lonely in my beautiful, spacious apartment. So I bought a couple of friends. Hate to have to buy a friend. Seems so entitled, but can't exactly meet a hamster at the local club." Maud nodded. Ted rolled his eyes. He whispered, "Can't you shut her up?" Everything was cool for a while. We got on famously. But then one day, I came home and discovered an extra dozen of the little critters. Who knew? All in one cage? Appalled, Silesia practically shouted, "Oh, no. I would never cage my friends. What do you take me for?" Agitated, Ted said, But is right. That was only the beginning. I've lost count. And that isn't even the worst part. Neither Maud nor Ted wanted to hear the worst. I discovered that they ate one of them. Maud nodded impassively. Yes, but nothing. I admit, I'm not that bothered that his family ate their baby brother. I mean, get real. Babies do get eaten. But poor little Jimmy. I'll never forget when I found little Jimmy was the hamster. Silesia looked at Ted like he was a lunatic. Focus, Ted. The circle of life and all that. I miss him. And Maud said, yes, I cannot get over. She dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Maud and Ted leaned in. After everything I did, just can't believe that they ate meat. Ted feigned a coughing fit to cover his laughter. Silesia waited for it to subside. I mean, what did I do wrong? How could they? Didn't I raise them right? You know, to be vegetarian. I thought they were I didn't skimp in sympathy. Maud touched Silesia's right hand. She covered Maud's with her left. Maud placed her free hand on top of Silesia's. Misty-eyed, they turned to Ted. He said, "Looks like you're first at bat, Maud." They didn't understand. He said, "So, is this it? Sorry, but I have to get on with my day." Maud straightened up. "No, Ted. Now that we're in sync with each other, I'll serve another tea. One made for you alone. A special tea? Just for me?" Oh, boy. Maud resisted trying to kill Ted. She wouldn't poison him, at least not in the usual way. "But I'm not about to let this hack destroy everything I've built." She wanted Ted's comeuppance, not his life. This potion would take his words, silence him, at least for a few days. He said, "So what's in this special tea?" "Hold the cyanide." Only he laughed. Maud said, "I can't reveal my secret recipe, but it contains a mixture of frankincense, sandalwood, ylang-ylang, rose, pepperum. I could go on. You get the idea." Ted and Silesia were awed at the complexities of Maud's preparations. "And Silesia, don't feel left out. I've also designed a special blend for you." They sat expectantly. Maud poured Ted's tea from a pot she'd set aside and handed him the small porcelain cup. He reached out, but stopped. Putting his hand up, he shook his head. "No thanks. The cup is chipped. I'll pass." Maud recovered. "You don't understand, Ted. It's not a chip. Only an irregularity in the glaze. These rare cups are highly prized, eagerly sought for." Ted couldn't care less. Silesia watched, fascinated. Maud continued, "You've heard of the Japanese tradition of mending a broken bowl with a vein of gold lining the crack? This is similar." Silesia said, "Oh, don't waste it. Give it to me." She reached out, "But it wasn't made for you. It's Ted's. Don't worry. I'll manage. It sounds delicious." This had never happened before. And this tea was pivotal to Maud's plan. She said, "If you insist." Ted said, "We all do." Silesia took Ted's cup, sipped, and smiled. Beginning to speak, she stopped and could only say, "More?" Not used to losing control, Maud refreshed Silesia's cup. Ted smiled at Silesia. "Ah, miss, the power of the well-chosen word." Silesia nodded, but could say nothing. Ted turned to Maud and said, "Good. You shut her up. At last." "I'll have some too," Maud said. "Yes, you need something. I can't have you go thirsty." Deftly switching pots, she poured him a cup of calming tea. They each smiled as he took the cup. He raised it in a mock toast and sipped. "Wow, that's delicious." He loosened his tie. "Maybe you sensed this, Maud, with your acute observational powers. I need to tell you, I write a column at the paper. Commentary, reviews, You know, opinions on the world at large. He leaned forward and took Maud's hand. I am happy to say you've earned yourself a glowing review, Maud replied. Ted? You? A writer? I had no idea. She refilled his cup with tea, promoting a positive attitude. Go with the flow, she thought. Silesia remained silent. Ted waxed poetic. Tranquility reigned. Rambling rose. I'm late! Life always passes over me. I'm late is just another phrase for situation normal. Absolutely fluffed up. Did you put in your application, Rosie? An unnecessary question, probably motivated by a sense of duty. I give my usual frown and grimace, a sigh, an I don't care, but will try to appear concerned look. The office crew is sniffing each other out. They're silently musing on the expected unfairness, their anticipated realization of failure, judging nepotism or brown-nosing from each participant. Jones, from service and repair, has been studying his policies. Gretel has finished her Certificate 4 in admin. Will is confident and also disgruntled because he has been at the WAM desk for 3 years and feels he deserves the promotion. Georgia has made coffee for the PA to the director every day for the last 2 months, and today has homemade chocolate brownies. The bright young things wander confidently, secretive, holding clipboards, adjusting their ties and hair clips. It's a yearly raise of $20K, and not to be ignored. But I most studiously ignored it. The primitive yearning for some freedom has snared its unrealistic teeth right into my IT life. Hell, I don't even know what the word means. I haven't read Jack Kerouac, but sense that this might be one of life's moments when Kerouac isn't just a writer. Kerouac is where I want to be. Pens, wads of reports, tea bags, coffee bags, a banana already populated with several tiny Drosophilas, laptop charger, some screwed up piece of something, possibly a chocolate wrapper. Everything into the locker. Close the door tightly before anything falls out. There may be war once the position is filled. It's a late winter, but June in the Highlands is starkly beautiful, misty, haunting even. The trains have all left, and I park my red Subaru into a free parking lot. The sky is an empty gray slate, and the new moon barely lights the smooth concrete platform. I walk carefully to the graveled exit, look into the darkness, and start walking beside highway number 1. Nobody would know if I am man or woman, as my hair is tucked into a black beanie. Nobody will try to stop for me, and I swagger, trying to look dangerous and unwelcome. My wind jacket is old and barely covers my hips. My tracky Dax, gray, also old. Just another vagabond itinerant wandering the roads. I step purposefully, too quickly, and slow myself. The journey, not the destination, I say. The crunch of the gravel beneath my rubber-soled gym shoes is satisfying. Each step releases its perfume of rain, oil, and petrol. I breathe its nourishment like a 4-year-old who has escaped from the front yard onto the street for the first time. A dog howls and then barks, and the cars gradually dissipate. At some point, I realize I am alone, even from any flow of traffic. It is 11 p.m. I have been walking for 3 hours. I breathe even more deeply. The air has chilled. A faint silhouette of bushland lines the horizon, and a small window twinkles somewhere on a hillside. As I walk, this small, friendly light disappears behind a ridge. A kookaburra announces something. It's time we all just went to sleep now. I will keep walking. I will keep walking until I want to stop. More hours pass by as I contemplate the stiffness in my calves, the ache in my arches, and the spots where my jacket does not cover my legs properly. The sky has started to reveal stars, hundreds of different-sized lights, satellites drifting through them. Betelgeuse and Sirius, Pleiades, Orion's belt, familiar sky landmarks that are warm to the touch. Homey reminders that I am not completely out of my mind. Excitement suddenly makes me look up and revel in the starry expanse. Some loose barbed wire behind a ditch at the side of the road looks promising, and I duck through it. I am starting to feel tired. An irrigation ditch with straight sides has been carved into the bare landscape, its straight sides starkly incongruent with the rocky outcrops and overgrazed land. A breeze has started up, and snow must have fallen in the mountains as the wind is cold. I lie carefully in the ditch, careful not to wet my shoes, marveling at the convenience of a raised bed, however hard. Staring into the skies, I think, this is where I should have an epiphany. But what will it be? I am a traveler, a nomad, a gypsy on the road. This is where enlightenment and realization comes from. The cold is biting deep, and I cover spots alternatively when the pain gets too much. First my knees, then my torso, but never everything all at once. Looking imploringly into the stars, I let all sense of self leave me, my mind floating into that vast canopy. The cold makes me feel a bit sorry for myself, and I feel not just alone, but lonely. I think I slept, my icy dreams interspersed with awkward rearranging of the useless wind jacket. The romance of my zero-gravity bed, just a cold, hard slant with pointy pebbles pressing into my back and hips, a crackle of nearby dried grass, the swoosh of saltbush being brushed past, a movement so close that I lose my breath in terror. I jolted awake. Was this near where those hitchhikers had disappeared? What if there was a man with a hatchet studying me, waiting for me? A gun? An intent to harm me? My heart was in my ears, and I breathed noiselessly, trying to stop breathing so fast. I sink into the hard clay. Just another boulder. Nobody here. After a half hour of immobile silence, it seemed that the killer would have moved by now. But I slowly lifted my chin to survey what was behind me, above the ditch, expecting any moment my life could be taken from me. A snort in my ear, and a scuffle from all around where my head lay. A dozen sheep were startled from where they had been staring at me. They stood back, gazing at the intruder, and slowly backed off. I was safe. The sheep were my friends, my protectors. They trotted away quickly now that it was obvious what this warm, soft-bodied thing was. I stayed the next 2 days in a rented room, happily proud of the adventure. I even called Jones and congratulated him on his new interest in company policy. Surely this point will be noted by management as a sign he is a contender in the offing. We agreed that it was a done deal. Georgia's coffee making was obsequiously good, and she was probably sleeping with the director anyway. I comforted Gretel and said she was far prettier than Georgia and had ethics, which Georgia patently did not. I put my hand on Will's shoulder and smiled. He'd get there soon, and was deserving. I might even explain my journey to Jones one day, but thought the better of it. I don't think he would understand. I barely could make sense of it myself, the demon in the portrait. Denise Gray looked away from her reflection in the store window. The sight of that perfectly proportioned young body only served to remind her of the curse. As a young woman, she'd posed for an enigmatic artist who had painted her picture while spinning words that were at once wonderful and frightening. It hadn't been long after that she learned the reality of the painting and its associated curse. One day, she was accosted by a thief. And before she realized what was happening, he had run a dagger through her heart. She cringed, but when the thief pulled the knife out, there was no blood where she had been stabbed. A swift kick to the groin sent him running. But when she opened her now ruined blouse, she realized that she was unharmed, not even a scratch. Denise thought about it and realized that her situation was like a story her mother had told her, called The Painting of Dorian Gray. "Damn," she whispered, as she scraped her knee on a large rock that she'd brushed against, only to look down and realize that her forever young body was still unharmed. She realized that she would have to return to the artist's studio. And if that painting was damaged, she would have to force the artist to find a way to lift the curse without killing her before her time. When she returned to confront the artist, she found him hanging in his studio, dead. Her search for the painting in his studio was in vain, and it was only after another attack that she realized the truth of the curse. The knife had pierced her heart. But again, she felt no pain after the knife had been pulled from her chest. She tracked the painting down to a gallery in a distant town, only to watch the painting destroyed by fire as the gallery burned to the ground, killing the hundreds of people inside. She'd spent many hours waiting for the death that never came. After that, she tried every means of killing herself, but to no avail. Finally, she felt a glimmer of hope as she learned of a book of paintings that had a copy of her painting in it. That book was rumored to be in this tiny library. She took a deep breath as she approached the tiny library. She knew she had to do something, or she would go insane from not being able to die. Denise had arrived just as Jessie had left the library and moved toward the tavern. An hour while the poor, pregnant librarian took lunch wouldn't make a lot of difference, she thought, as she sat down on a nearby bench. She smiled as a group of children ran by. One little brown-eyed girl stopped and smiled back, then ran to join her friends. "The book you want is here," Jessie said, "but you may be disappointed. The book is a manual for destroying demons." "I don't feel like a demon," Denise said. Jessie slid the leather hand-bound book toward Denise. "What happens if I open it?" Jessie shrugged. "I haven't read that far." Denise felt a tingling race up her arm as she pulled the book toward herself. What if she got sucked into the book when she opened it? She looked down at her ruined blouse. She'd neglected to change the blouse, even though she had another in her small travel bag. Throwing caution to the wind, she opened the book. Being stuck in the book would be no worse than not being able to kill herself. The first thing she saw was a horrible version of herself. Her hair was singed, and every injury she'd sustained in getting there had scarred over. When she could finally pull her eyes away from the picture, she began to read. The demon her painting had become had spoken from the painting and convinced the artist to hang himself. Then she had started the fire that destroyed the original painting, killing all the people there for the unveiling. Denise slammed the book closed. The pull of the woman in the painting was more than she could stand. "Are you affected as well?" Denise asked, only to be met by a blank stare from Jessie. A few moments later, her unborn child, kicking wildly, stirred Jessie back to life. "We have to destroy the book," Denise said. Jessie shook her head. "She will take us all with her." Denise slammed her hand down on the book before Jessie could open it. "That's exactly what she wants you to think. But trust me," Jessie's unborn baby kicked so hard that she gasped. "I can't help you. I'll take care of it," Denise said, taking the book and leaving the library. Denise counted herself lucky that the tiny library was on a small tropical island with an active volcano. It would only take her half a day to get to the volcano cone, light the book on fire, and drop it into the liquid lava below. She only hoped that would be enough. As she moved toward the volcano, the book and the demon it contained recognized her intent. "Hand over that book," the huge Polynesian man standing in her way said, his gun drawn. On some level, Denise knew that the man was under the influence of the demon. She ran around him and felt the bullet from his gun rip through the ruined blouse and on through her right shoulder. By the time she reached the trail at the edge of the volcano, she could feel the demon trying to stop her. Branches and thorns reached out for her, only to rip more holes in her ruined blouse as she ran toward the summit. Finally, she reached the edge of the cauldron and the bubbling lava below. "No!" The sound of the wind and the rush of the heat shouted as the edges of the book began to smoke. The book burst into flames as she tossed the book toward the lava. It hung suspended above the lava, flaming bigger and brighter, but without being consumed. Suddenly, she noticed that the young girl she'd seen before had caught up to her. "It's drawing power from your blouse." Denise shook her head. None of this made sense. The blouse had taken the brunt of the damage inflicted on her and was ragged and full of holes. "You have to destroy the blouse as well," the girl said, before racing away from the lip. At the bottom of the trail, she saw the other children blocking the way of the adults who were under the influence of the book. Denise turned to see flame explode from the book and realized that she had no choice. If destroying the blouse didn't work, she would have to offer herself to the volcano. But this glimmer of hope had given her a reason to live. She pulled the remains of that ruined blouse off and threw it down at the boiling lava below. The atmosphere around the book howled in rage as the blouse fluttered to the surface of the lava and then burst into flames. The book exploded, scattering burning ash over everything. Before Denise could react, the same young girl was pulling her away from the lip of the cauldron. She stumbled into the group and children, and then her world went black. Denise remembered that blouse as the one that the artist had insisted she wear while he worked on the painting. What happened after that was a blur until that book exploded over the cauldron. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes to the soft light of the sun coming in through the curtains of a cottage near the ocean. It was a dream, she thought, until she realized that she wasn't wearing the blouse anymore. The painting and the book had been destroyed, but she didn't know about the curse. She inspected her body and then wrapped a sheet around her till she could find some clothes. Denise opened the door and saw children playing in front of the cottage, then stepped onto the porch and noticed a thorny bush near the steps into the yard. She idly pricked her finger and gave a sigh of relief as she realized that the curse was gone when a tiny drop of blood formed on her finger. "The children told us how you saved us," Jessie said, as she approached from the side yard. Denise shrugged. "I needed to be free of the curse," Jess smiled. "The children like having you around, and we are in the market for school teacher." Denise had never considered anything like this. She'd been so young when the nightmare started. She looked down. Her body was still young. And if the kids had trusted her, maybe she could try. "It beats modeling," she thought, as she followed Jessie back toward the cottage. I met death last night, being alone in one of London's many streets. I was already cold, but his presence behind me was more than that. It was ice. Sharp, hard ice that seared through my flesh, traveled through my blood, urging goosebumps to shoot out of my skin. When I turned down the lonely alley, I regretted it instantly. It was said that he lingered in dark streets, waiting for a desperate soul to pass him by. But still, I had decided to keep going. Arriving in London on the night of my sister's birthday was already fine. But her party had begun at 8 p.m., and I didn't need to look at my watch to know that it was way past that already. She would kill me for being late. So late. But that wasn't the only reason I dared not turn back. It had been too long since I'd last walked these streets. Since I'd last felt the heavy air of London pressing down on me, clogging my lungs with soot and smoke. Life on the road had made me lighter, more restless. But coming back here was like stepping into a grave. The city had a way of sinking its teeth into you, of making you forget where you'd been and why you'd left. Fearing death was childish. My parents had told me as such when I refused to go on one of the rides at the festival extravaganza during our trip to America. But this was different. Like the images in my mind of falling from great heights and being trampled by horses had cleared, revealing something so impossible that it was the only thing my mind deemed plausible. He was behind me. I did not turn around. I did not blink. My eyes remained open, forgetting how dry they had become. I just stood there, an invisible force stopping my feet from taking off into a run, from sprinting around corners and through streets until he would inevitably catch me. I wondered what it would feel like. A sudden pain in my chest, a fog corrupting my mind. My vision slowly dimmed until I drifted off into a never-ending, dreamless sleep. Or maybe I would feel nothing. Maybe I would be awake 1 second, thinking of all the ways I was going to die, and the next, I would be lying on the ground, waiting for someone to find me. Although by then, it would be too late. No one could ever be saved. The goosebumps grew larger as his presence sauntered towards me, like prey waiting for the predator, knowing that it was neither fast enough nor strong enough to face it. I thought about all those moments I had let slip through my fingers. All those opportunities I had missed out on, all those potential friends, and more that I had hung back from, thinking that I wasn't worth their time. Now, I thought that I should have chosen who was worth my time, for it was going to be shorter than anyone would have expected. And who would have blamed them for thinking I had all the time in the world? I always thought, never did. Always calculated, never acted. Always worried about others, and never spared a thought for myself. Now, just like then, I waited. He was as silent as the night. The once cawing crows and hissing cats were already in mourning. He stood right behind me, dark as a shadow. His breath a gentle breeze against my neck. The single word spoken in a voice rich in charm, alluring me to turn around, to face the predator, but I did not turn around. Still, I did not blink. The feeling in my fingers came back, and I was met with the warmth of coming out of an ice bath into the blazing sun. My feet began to move, the invisible force gone like it was never there. And soon I was running through winding streets, trying to think of anything but what had just happened. I'm late, I thought. I'm so late, and my sister will be mad. I tried to convince myself that was why I was running. Nothing happened. I saw nothing. My breath tore through the night's air as my book struck the slick cobblestones. Gas lamps fought against the choking fog, blinding me. The stray hairs that I had forgotten to shave on my arms stood up as ice invaded my lungs once more. No, please no. I had heard people talk about terror whipping through them, causing them to panic and shake. But that was a lie. Terror didn't come all at once. It came in waves, each one bigger than the last, freezing my lungs and clenching my throat in a vice-like grip. Why did I think that I could outrun him? Why did I think I could outrun the inevitable? I looked down at my pale skirts, now splattered in mud, and refused to look up again. The shock of what I might see would kill me before he did. He made no sound as he approached for the second time. No footsteps, no shift of breath or fabric. Just the sudden, certain sense of him standing before me. Close, too close. My eyes stayed down. I could feel him watching me, the weight of his gaze pressing against my skin like the brush of fingertips. My breath hitched. My fingers curled into the folds of my dress. He said nothing. He did nothing. Just stood there, silent and motionless. The seconds stretched and broke. My pulse thudded in my throat like the fear in my stomach, mixing with something warmer, darker beneath my ribs. I imagined what his eyes must have been like. Dark, unblinking, tracing the line of my collarbone and the curve of my mouth. Then, just as quietly as he had come, he left for the second time in a single hour. Slowly, cautiously, I dared to lift my head. The street was empty again, mist curling through the dim light. I waited for what might have been seconds or minutes. I didn't know. But I managed to walk again. But I didn't run. I no longer cared that I was late. Finally, I reached it. A tall iron gate, its surface slick with rain that I hadn't realized was falling. A footman in a crisp coat stood at attention beneath a gaslight's feeble glow, his face blank under the brim of his hat. His eyes sharpened when he saw me. Without a word, he pushed the gate open, allowing me to slip through. The moment the gate clicked shut behind me, the street's grim chill seemed to dissolve. A long, white gravel path wound through manicured gardens, lit by golden candles and strung by iron posts. Tall windows loomed over me as music floated through the air. As soon as I made it into the house, I passed the polished wood and gilded mirrors, up the stairs to the spare bedroom where I flopped onto the well-made bed, ignoring the state of my clothes. Did I feel bad for leaving my sister on her birthday? Of course, but I just couldn't cope with anyone or anything. I didn't think I could even fall asleep, no matter how much my body craved it. I had spent so long moving from place to place, never staying long enough to leave a mark, never bothering to make ties. I told myself it was because I liked the freedom, the open road, the thrill of waking up in a new city with new faces. But the truth was simpler. It was easier not to care when you knew you wouldn't stay long enough to lose anything. I met death last night, and I lived, the painter of souls. It was the first time in 2 years that the group of friends had reunited for this trip. After many cancellations and unfinished plans, everyone had made an effort to make this outing a reality. They hadn't spoken much during the funeral 2 years ago, and it almost seemed as if their friendship would dissolve soon after. But through the video game chats they frequented, nostalgia and good memories rekindled the bonds that had weakened with the loss. They talked about how competitive Bennett had been in many of the games they played, how he would ask for rematches multiple times, failure after failure. They spoke about how he would have wanted them to spend time remembering him, just like this, with laughter and anecdotes. The three of them went from contacting each other through video game chats to messaging on their phones and making video calls. We should go on the trip, Arlo had suggested one day during one of their group calls. There was a long silence before Thiago said, "Do you mean?" "Yes," Arlo confirmed. The travel plan Bennett shared days before. "Before what happened? Are you sure?" Roman asked. It was his idea, and he was the most excited about it. We never understood what had motivated him so much to organize this trip. He wanted us to meet someone, Arlo said. That's the only thing I remember. Someone in the middle of the rainforest? Thiago inquired. Well, it was also a sightseeing trip around the city, and a chance to visit many of the famous archaeological exhibitions in the area. The museums, too, added Arlo, who had, in fact, graduated in art history. And what about the person you said he wanted to find? Roman asked. I suppose we don't have enough information to look into that, Arlo observed. That's why I suggest we take the trip in his honor and try to enjoy it as the four of us would have. You know? That's not a bad idea, Thiago said, encouraged. I could use a holiday. I need to get out of here. An excuse to take a break from my business. And when was the last time we traveled together? Roman added. Let's do it. Just like that, the three of them made their preparations for the trip on the following weeks. They looked up information about their destination and its tourist attractions, paid for their plane tickets, and agreed to meet at the airport 2 hours before the flight. On his way to the airport, Arlo had decided to stop by Bennett's house. He knocked on the door, and it was Bennett's mother who answered. The woman looked at him in surprise, but she immediately moved to hug him once she recognized him. My goodness, Arlo, it's been so long. I wasn't expecting to see you after the funeral. Come in, come in. She invited him inside. They entered the living room, where photos of Bennett with his siblings and parents filled every corner of the room. Arlo avoided looking at them as his mother offered him a seat. No, thank you. He smiled politely. I was just passing by to let you know that I'm going on a trip. Actually, the three of us are going. It's a plan Bennett shared with us before he left. The woman nodded, perfectly understanding what he meant. Yes, the trip. He wouldn't stop talking about it. I'm so glad the three of you have decided to go. Bennett would be so happy to know this. I know, Arlo sighed. I know we haven't spoken to you since the funeral. We tried to reach out, but it was very difficult. I understand, Arlo, she said, placing a comforting hand on his arm. I just wanted to stop by to tell you about our plans in person, and also to see his room one last time. I hope that's not too intrusive a request. I just needed to see the last space he was in. The woman nodded again, understandingly. It's not intrusive at all. Go ahead, you can go in. To be honest, it's a relief to have someone else in that room, even if only for a few minutes. My husband and I are starting to feel the deep silence coming from it. His mother remained in the living room, while Arlo climbed the stairs to the room. He opened the door, and immediately, the unmistakable scent of Bennett's deodorant reached his nostrils, mixed with the smell of a closed-up room and the dust floating from the shelves. Most of his belongings and clothes were packed away in boxes that the family would donate to charity, but the posters and printed images on the walls had not yet been taken down. Arlo stepped closer to observe them carefully. Bennett used to draw a lot in his spare time. Despite having graduated in computer science and cybersecurity, his true passion had been drawing and sketching, something he had dedicated himself to in his free time, both inside and outside of university. On the wall were drawings that seemed to depict them, the group of friends, peculiarly colored in primary colors. In some drawings, Roman and Thiago were shaded in pink tones. In others, a slightly more purple hue. Bennett himself was shaded in gray. Arlo was always painted in red. Arlo gazed at the drawings with resentment, holding back the urge to tear the paper from the wall. During the first 2 days at their destination, the three friends spent their time at the 4-star hotel they had booked. When Arlo suggested going to the city center to explore, the other two sighed in annoyance. "We have a week and a half to explore whatever you want," said Thiago, still wrapped in his sheets. "We won't have the chance to enjoy this level of luxury once these holidays are over. You're the one finishing a PhD in history and art, Arlo. You can go without us," added Roman as he put on his swimming trunks. Getting ready to head to the pool, Arlo irritably reminded them, "This trip is for Bennett. You know he would have wanted to see the exhibitions and museums. You've been saying that for weeks," Roman retorted, turning to face him. What's with the sudden interest in what he wanted to explore? If I remember correctly, you always ignored all the drawings and paintings he tried to share with us. Now Thiago sat up on the bed, watching his friends as they confronted each other. "What's gotten into you, Roman?" Arlo asked. "I don't know. Why are you making us feel like you're the one who cares the most about his death and his final wishes? We mourn his loss too. Don't try to act like you're above us with your false moral code." Arlo simply pulled a small, crumpled note from his pocket and shoved it in Roman's face. This is the place he wanted to visit, along with the name of the person he wanted to see. Roman snatched the paper to read it himself. Thiago got up to take a look as well and asked, "Was this what you went to get from his house?" Avoiding the question, Arlo said, "I'm not trying to impose some false moral code on you. It's normal to feel guilt. But the best thing we can do is show a bit of interest in what he loved. That's all I'm trying to do." With that, he left the room. Thiago and Roman exchanged uneasy glances. "I have no idea what's going through his head," said Roman. Thiago shrugged, though his expression remained troubled. "You heard what he said. It's normal to feel guilt. I'm sure he's going through the same thing." An hour later, the three of them made their way into the city, stopping by the tourist spots they had planned in advance. This time, however, the excitement they had initially felt for the trip was gone. A sense of impending doom loomed over them, and there was nothing they could do to dispel it. All of a sudden, what had been a journey in memory of their friend was being exposed as the farce they had tried to mask with that ridiculous excuse. The last place left to visit was the shop. It was an art shop. From the outside, it had that vintage aesthetic that attracted art lovers looking for something unique and different. Something timeless, stuck in time. The three entered cautiously. The shop was empty, and the light streaming through the glass windows fell upon the golden and bronze frames of the various paintings hanging and stacked everywhere. All the paintings depicted people, some in groups, others alone. At first glance, they seemed like photographs, edited in different colors, but upon closer inspection, one could appreciate the hand-drawn strokes and the pigment of watercolors and oil paint. The style of these paintings looks familiar, Thiago murmured. Without much enthusiasm, Roman nodded. Yeah, this is exactly how Bennett used to draw. The characters in the paintings were painted monochromatically. Each person in each painting had a certain tone of color assigned to them. Some colors were more intense than others. Background characters in landscapes or scenes were usually depicted in different shades of gray. In portraits, many were also colored in gray. The three had been so absorbed in the artwork that they hadn't noticed the man who had approached them to greet them. "Greetings," he said. The group startled and turned their attention to him. The shop owner wasn't as old as they had expected. He was likely in his mid-30s. He dressed just like one of them, except for the paint-stained apron he wore. His eyes were a peculiar silver color that stood out in the dim light of the shop. "We're looking for Keita," Arlo stated. "That's me," the man confirmed, pointing to himself. His strong West African accent was evident in his words. "I've been expecting you." Did Bennett talk to you about us?" Thiago stammered. With a rather calm demeanor, Keita tilted his head as if the answer was somewhat complicated. "He spoke to me about you the first time he came here. But that was also the last time I ever saw him," he said, turning to search through a stack of paintings behind him. Carefully, he pulled one out. "Exactly 2 years ago. This is what I painted." Keita placed the painting in front of them. Roman paled at the sight of it. Thiago still couldn't understand, and Arlo remained silent, pressing his lips together. The painting was a reproduction of a real photo. The four of them had taken 3 years ago on a road trip to the mountains. The picture had been taken with a camera set on a tripod. However, in this painting, only Arlo, Roman, and Thiago smiled at the camera, standing in front of a rocky landscape with waterfalls cascading into a lake. Bennett appeared as a gray shadow in the background, at the edge of the lake, a few meters away from them. Beside him, another gray figure crouched at Bennett's feet, as if crying. It looked like the figure of a woman. In the painting, Arlo was colored in a deep red, while Thiago and Roman were shades of maroon. "Where did you get this from?" Arlo demanded. "From the truth," Keita answered. "You guys remember exactly what happened that day, don't you?" No one answered. The silence itself was confirmation. "I can see the color of your souls from miles and miles away," the artist continued. "I don't need to know you to start painting what each of you inspires in me." His tone became more accusatory as he went on. "Bennett had this gift too. He came to me because he wanted to learn more about it. And you, Arlo, you knew that." Roman turned to Arlo, stunned by such information. "Yet you made him self-medicate with drugs so he would lose his mind and end up taking his own life," Kada continued. "I didn't want Bennett to die," Arlo protested, raising his voice. For the first time in years, he seemed to be losing his composure. "I just wanted him to forget and stop painting those damn drawings. He was going to get us in trouble." "You wanted him to forget her?" Kada asked. He walked over to his desk and picked up some drawings, this time on notebook paper, traced by a different hand. "Bennett gave me these during his last visit." Thiago held them in his hands. Upon seeing the frantic sketches of a cadaverous woman in black, gray, and green colors, he gasped, "My God!" and let the sheets fall to the floor in shock. "No one bothered to pick them up. She was on the way," Roman murmured, as if talking to himself, as if justifying it to himself. "She came out from between the trees like a mad woman. That's why we hit her with the car. She fell into the lake, and there was nothing else we could do," Thiago exclaimed desperately. "Why jump into the lake to retrieve a body that was already lifeless?" All that Arlo said to Kada was, "What do you plan to do with all of this? Send it to the police?" At the absurdity of his question, Kada replied, "I am not in charge of the punishment of men. Justice will be served, but not by me." His silver eyes gleamed as he spoke. "Just keep in mind that now 2 souls are tied to your fate." As soon as they left the place, the 3 of them didn't say a word to each other until they reached the hotel. The following day, each took their flight back home. In the following months, Thiago turned himself in to the police as an accomplice in the cover-up of the hit and run. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. When the police interrogated Roman, he revealed that although they were all drunk at the time of the incident, it was Arlo who was driving the car and who suggested they continue the trip. Roman was facing 2 years in prison. No one knew of Arlo's whereabouts. He seemed to have moved and changed his name. The authorities did what they could to search for him, but since the victim had been someone suffering from a mental illness and had run away from her own home, and therefore had little family who could report her disappearance, except for a sister, they were content with having 2 guilty individuals in prison and letting the one who escaped go free. Months after all of this, in their respective cells, Roman and Thiago received a letter in a brown envelope. The letter consisted of a pencil-drawn illustration showing Arlo drowning in a lake of skulls. The lake was the only part painted in a deep red, like blood. Master of puppets. Io sono il padrone, e tu sei il burattino. I am the master, and you are the puppet. Working in an antique store was hardly where Aislinn saw herself 5 years ago. But beggars couldn't be choosers in this economy. Her dreams of becoming someone had been crushed by the reality of life and the collapse of her support system after college, and she depended on this job to make ends meet. Still, something was charming about the Ravenswares, even if she did encounter some characters from time to time. Her cousin often asked her if she had ever felt spirits or weird energy working around the real skulls, the old Victorian dolls, or the taxidermy of the raven that gave the store its name. Like everyone in the town, Aislinn had heard horror stories about the objects sold from this place. A man bought a doll for his daughter, and they all vanished without a trace a week later. A woman bought a pretty ring and died in a freak accident with the ring on her finger. Someone bought an old statue and fell down their stairs. The truth was, Aislinn didn't believe in those sorts of things. Ghosts, ghouls, or energies. Sure, the place was creepy if you worked late alone on long winter nights, but it paid the bills. Those horror stories were coincidences. Plenty of people had purchased items from the Raven's wrath without an issue. Her cousin believed in that side of things so strongly. People whispered about her behind their hands. If Aislinn started believing, what would they say about their family? It was bad enough she worked here. The customers you never heard about were outsiders. A tiny voice in her head would whisper when she had this argument with herself. You've never followed up to check on what happened afterwards. She looked up from her phone when Eli barged their way back through the piles of antique junk piled around the place. A guy dropped off this painting today. I'm telling you, it's weird. Aislinn knew that everything here was weird in one form or another. She once had someone try to offer a jar of real human teeth. That had been on her second day, and regrettably, it had not been her last strange experience. They jerked their thumb over their shoulder. It's out the back by the rocking horse. I need you to label it up before you leave tonight. Did he give any details? Nah, I'm surprised you didn't see him. Dark-haired guy, glasses, had some sort of accent. She vaguely recalled someone coming in of that description when she'd been restocking some old hardbacks and had directed him towards Eli at the back of the store. She wouldn't have thought of him again, save for the odd look in his dark eyes. I sent him to the back to see you. He had this look in his eyes, like he'd seen things, you know? I offered him a fair price, but he didn't even want the money. He just said to take it. He didn't want money? Aislinn repeated slowly. That's a bit weird, don't you think? Maybe it came with bad memories or something. Eli shrugged. Just make sure to get it cataloged to go out on display. I've got to head off. I'll see you tomorrow. The afternoon was quickly fading, the air becoming colder and far less welcoming inside. The eyes of the raven on the desk seemed to watch her every move, and the gentle ticking of the antique clocks suddenly felt ominous. Even the shadows of the shelves seemed to be lengthening, reaching out in her direction. Aisling looked up from her book and paused. The store had fallen eerily silent. She felt her heartbeat increase as the hair at the back of her neck stood up. Hello? Why was she calling out? There was no one there. No one had entered the shop. The bell above the door had been silent for hours. A faint whisper seemed to be coming from the distance. Someone must have left the radio on in the storage room. She walked to the back of the store, trying to ignore the feeling that the eyes of the dolls were watching her. It wasn't like her to be this paranoid. She pushed the door open wide and reached in to grab the portable radio the manager insisted on keeping around. Her hand found the handle and lifted it out. It was switched off. Okay, she muttered, feeling a cold trickle of sweat run down her back. She set the radio down on an empty stool and worked away around the mountains of antiques to find the latest addition to the collection. Aisling pulled the sheet off slowly and recoiled. The painting was of a hanging puppet, clearly based on the original Pinocchio story. It's dressed in traditional clothes against a gruesome backdrop of bones and the occasional skull. The entire thing was bordered by a swirling wine-red, blood red. A shudder ran down her spine as she took in all the gruesome details. The glass on the front was cracked, but that was hardly anything they couldn't fix. There was something odd about the break, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She turned the painting over to check the back of the frame and noticed a faded name on the back, too illegible to read, and an unmistakable bloody handprint. What the hell? The painting clattered to the floor as she reeled back, banging into a cabinet and screaming as the puppet hanging there swung into her face. Its painted smile seemed twisted into a cruel leer as she swatted it away, clutching at her chest. She took some calming breaths. She picked the painting up from the floor with shaking hands and turned it over, aware of her heart racing in her chest. There's no bloody handprint, only the faded marks of a name. You're going mad, she muttered to herself. You need to get out more. She carried the painting to the desk and started cataloging it, intrigued by the lack of an artist's mark. Even a quick Google search yielded no results, and after a few minutes, she brought it back to sit at the back by the dolls and puppets. She took a moment longer to stare at it and turned back to the front. There was a rocking horse in the middle of the aisle. No, that wasn't possible. She hadn't moved anything. Hello? She called out nervously. This isn't funny now. Come out. When no one answered, she tried to focus. Maybe it had been there before, and she had simply walked past it, not noticing. Eli had said the painting was out the back by the rocking horse. For a moment, her cousin's voice echoed in her ear. Though she tried to deny it, this was not the first time Something like this had happened on her shift. Eli had laughed it off with her at the time, but she hadn't seen a bloody handprint last time. Eli had moved the horse. That's all there was to it. Aislinn walked back to the front of the store and stared out at the street. Across at the ordinary sight of the small local shop and the dress shop beside it. Maybe she needed a holiday. The radio started playing a Cure song. Had she turned it on? When had she brought it to the front? Suddenly, the dark shop seemed alien to her. No, now she was being stupid. She didn't believe in any of that stuff. A sudden tiredness overcame her as she sat back in her chair and started to doze, watching the cuckoo bird on the antique clock swing backwards and forwards, swinging. She could hear the distant creaking sound of a rope and sobbing cries, growing louder and louder. Oh, how painful, how painful. Why wasn't I good? Something was hovering in the corner of her vision. Every instinct in her body screamed at her not to turn and look, to run away from that shadow. She turned her head and saw the puppet from the painting. It raised its head and leered at her. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. Suddenly, she was the one battling with the rope as the puppet laughed and screeched over and over. I want to be real. I want to be real. I want to be real. Aislinn leapt up from her sleep, feeling the phantom rope around her throat. Every item in the shop was facing her. They seemed to be looming towards her, skulls echoing the cries of the horrific voice as it cried out over and over. Whatever sick joke this was, she wasn't playing anymore. She ran to the door and tried to haul it open. It was locked. The room seemed to darken, and the sound of the puppet's voice, distant at first, became unmistakable, growing clearer with each passing second. Its whispers now unmistakably directed at her. Oh, che male, che male. She picked up a metal poker and walked to where the painting sat. The voice was louder now, its desperate cries in both English and Italian piercing her ears. What the hell are you? The voices paused. You should let me out. You're just like me. You're a puppet too. Aislinn lifted the metal poker above her head. What are you? You should let me out, Aislinn. She tried to move away, but her back smacked into a large cabinet. What the hell are you? My last puppet didn't obey. He brought me here. Un burattino che non obbedisce finisce sempre male. A puppet who does not obey always ends badly. You should let me out. I've always been here, waiting for someone to let me out. She realized then what was wrong with the glass. Someone, something, was trying to break free from the inside. Her own reflection in the glass warped into a puppet's face, and she felt the weight of something choking her. No, she was not a puppet. She was a human. This wasn't real. I am the master of puppets. Puppets have no soul, but they do a lot of harm. I tried to take his soul, but he broke free. You will let me out. You are my puppet now. You saw it in the glass. You're like me." Iceland watched in horror as the cracks in the glass grew wider. "It will end badly for you if you do not obey." She lifted the poker to swing it, and the hands of the puppets on display reached out and grabbed her throat, pulling her backwards. "A bad puppet is of no use to me. I have been waiting for you. There's nothing to be done. One must really die good." Iceland screamed, trying to throw the puppets off. She twisted in their grip, seeing the cracks grow wider and wider. "When you're not real, nothing hurts, Iceland. But the more I try to be real, the more I feel pain." "Oh, the pain. How painful this is. Can't you feel it?" The creaking of the rope was unbearable. The spiraling voice wailing and wailing as she begged for this to stop, for her to wake up, to let this nightmare end. Iceland woke in her chair. The clock read the same time as it had before, but something was different. Everything was different. At some point, the gentle light of the afternoon had faded into a gray gloom bordering on darkness. This day seemed to be lasting an eternity. It was all a nightmare, a terrible nightmare. She saw it then. Her vision narrowed, and her chest tightened as she stared at it. The painting, mocking her from the back, as it always had. Maybe this was still a nightmare taken new form. Those horrible skulls leering at her, that noise, that endless noise. She approached it slowly and ran her hands over the cracks in the glass, feeling her skin crawl with revulsion. The glass was cold, unnaturally cold, like it was sucking the little warmth she had left from her fingers. "I want to be real, Iceland." A voice whispered in her ear, "You should let me out. I have waited so long." She grabbed the poker from where it lay on the ground and lifted it, bringing it down to strike the glass. A gloved hand reached out of the frame and snatched hold of her wrist, forcing her to drop the poker in shock. A puppet has no soul, but it can do harm. It cackled, drawing her closer to the frame. "You're my puppet now. Your soul is mine." "No!" she screamed, grabbing at the nearest object, a porcelain bird, and throwing it at the puppet. "You aren't real. None of this is real." She felt the world begin to blur and tried to pull away from its grip. But it was too late. This couldn't be it. This couldn't be how this ended for her. This wasn't fair. This wasn't fair. "You aren't real," she cried as her mind began to break. "You aren't real." She felt the rancid breath of the puppet as it whispered in her ear, "And now neither are you." When the world went gray, joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of Earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light, blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was, shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness, to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned, it's been erased, the vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat, as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us, but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray, repeat, every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought, since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was. A vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent, the only sound the crunching of boots landing against who knows what. And the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray. A gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me, already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spar of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other, until, where'd it go? I blink. Scanning the scene, my eyes dart frantically from each piece of colorless scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean spray continuously. Elara? Sienna, one of the other young scavengers asked, kneeling down in front of me. You okay? I blink back tears I didn't know were welling, forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. Yeah. My voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color, Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything, everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. But that was just the way Sienna made everything seem. Easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life, in its fullest form, is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint, something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance, is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by. And if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation, no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth. Surrounded by rubble, I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face, a stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors, and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air, and I swear the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it. If it kills me, I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead. No wind whispers through trees, because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen, perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it, A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet. I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, gray. Repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs, I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me. The same lifeless sky above. But beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else, green, my breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection as if it exists in another world. As if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything. A shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone. Just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky. And then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into. Its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Prepared to confront the tree, I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought, until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying, but it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here. Among the decay, color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the, what about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens, as if I can hold on to her words, onto her, for guidance, like I always have. And I intend to do just that. One step. For hope, another. For faith, 2 steps. For a new life, another. For Sienna. And then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back. Angry Highway by Stephen Scott. Get the hell out of the way. Jerry made sure to honk twice at the fellow in the fast lane. The car moved over, slowly. He moved closer to the man's bumper and flashed his headlights. Come on, stupid jerk. David clutched his armrest, trying to hide his fright. Jerry, calm down. He sped past the car, glancing over at the elderly man. What? You siding with that idiot? He was blocking the passing lane. David, hoping to dodge the blunt words of Jerry, countered with a calm voice. Well, you're almost 15 over the limit. Jerry glared at David sternly. I'm the professional here. The trainee sighed, revealing his agitation. Do you want to ride with me or not? Not liking the hostile tone, David sighed. I just want to learn the procedures. Jerry set the steering wheel between his legs, reached inside the bag, and pulled out his hamburger. He ate it, then glanced at his newspaper. David somehow hid his panic, reached over, and took hold of the steering wheel. What the hell is wrong with you? Jerry asked through his bites. Just helping you out. I don't need your help. I do this all the time. David released his grip, fought his own irritation at Jerry's tone. David was the new guy and wanted a job, and certainly didn't want to piss off his trainer. He found a neutral subject. So, how long does the route take you? Some days it's longer, Jerry said between chews. Some days I have to go to Weatherford or Mount Vernon. It depends on what the physicians in those towns need. It's pretty easy. I listen to the radio a lot. Eat when I need to. Take a dump when I need to. Seems like a lonely job. It can be. He put down the food and paper and braked as he approached a slow truck. The highway reduced to 2 lanes, taking away a safe way pass. Move it, jerk. It moved to the right slightly, but Jerry could not see around it. The truck slowed. Move over, dipshit. Jerry pushed on the horn heavily. I can't see. Although he saw a hill, he decided to go anyway. Pulling completely in the oncoming lane, he revved up the engine. A sports utility vehicle emerged in front of them. He sped up more, determined to get back over in front of the truck. The SUV slightly moved to the right while honking. Jerry accelerated his small pickup. Shit, David whispered. He clutched the handle above his window as everything in his chest froze into a block of ice. Jerry zipped back to his lane with seconds to spare. Hearing both trucks honk at him, he stuck one hand out the window and extended his finger. Jerks, he mumbled. David clutched his chest, breathing heavy. Jerry, you may have been doing this a long time and used to pulling stunts like that. If you want to play with your life, that's fine. But you're also playing with mine. What? It's their fault? The SUV or the truck should have pulled over or slowed down. There's no shoulder. Their argument was lost in a high-pitched sound. A glint flashed across the rearview mirror. It happened again. The noise and flashes increased, as if gaining on them. The unassuming SUV had donned lights and sirens. The flashing red lights from inside the cab looked angry, and the flashing headlights played a game of gotcha. Jerry cursed and slowly pulled over. The window slid into the door, and Jerry glanced back at the highway patrolman. License and registration, please. He handed both to the patrolman. You don't have anything better to do. The patrolman's head snapped up from examining the documents. Sir, wait here while I check on something. He rolled the window up to guard from the Texas heat. I can't believe this guy. I can't believe you, mumbled David. Both sat quiet, letting the air conditioning keep them cool. Eventually, the patrolman returned. "Sir, you've had 2 moving violations in the last 18 months. I'm citing you for reckless driving and improper lane change." "What?" Jerry exclaimed. "I can't believe this crap." "Sir, according to my radar, you were doing more than 20 over the limit. You made a lane change with a solid yellow line and within a quarter-mile of a hill. You endangered my life and the life of that trucker." "I ought to throw this ticket away," Jerry said, while shaking it in the patrolman's face. "I'd then have to cite you for littering. Drive safely, sir." Jerry rolled the window back up while putting the ticket in his visor pocket. With the window cracked, he had to get in the last word. "Asshole." He stewed at the patrolman while driving away. As the sun set behind him, it seemed to cool his temper until they reached Fort Worth. Jerry stayed in the passing lane, honking at anyone traveling too slow and making abrupt lane changes. Almost to the office, he sailed through 2 red lights. He stopped when a car in front of him stopped for the traffic signal. As soon as the light turned green, Jerry honked. "Move it, dipshit. It's green." Reaching the office, he took the documents inside and turned them into his boss. He showed David the proper techniques for checking the documents in and checking out for the day. "So that's the life of a courier. What do you think?" David stepped close and stared at Jerry angrily. "I may be new here, but you were downright reckless and unprofessional today. I'm willing to keep this between you and me today. But if I ever hear of you acting like this again, or see it, I'll go straight to the offices about it." Jerry laughed when David turned and walked away. What does he know? I'm a good driver. I'm a professional. It was their fault. Pushing the accelerator hard, Jerry passed the slow driver. "Jerk," he said while honking. Still angry about David's tirade from yesterday, Jerry tried to imagine how he could have handled the situation better. I should have told him I've been driving courier for 10 years, and he should keep his mouth shut, or I'll shut it for him. Or I could have told him to go to hell. Maybe I should have. His mind snapped to attention when seeing another slow-moving driver. Glancing at his speedometer, Jerry noticed he traveled nearly 90. What is today? Everyone drives slow today? "Asshole," he yelled while passing the car. Hearing a horn, he saw the car in the oncoming lane. Accelerating, he zipped back into his lane with a few seconds to spare. A yawn deflated Jerry's ire. The sun started to drop in the western sky, taking away the gale force winds. For a split second, the beautiful orange glare took away his temper. The highway seemed lonelier today. He actually missed David in the car. Occasionally, he did train a new driver, which was something he enjoyed. His stomach moaned. Jerry sped faster, wanting to get to a restaurant in the next town, then drop off the last bit of pharmaceuticals, then head home. The car seemed relieved as well when the engine stopped. Stretching his back and arms, Jerry tried to awaken his stiff, atrophied muscles. Popping his joints, he looked forward to a nice meal. Sitting at his favorite booth, he did not even glance at the menu. The familiar waitress appeared. Somewhere between fit and heavy, she had aged gray eyes that had plenty of wisdom, but mostly from hearing stories. Her wrinkles disappeared in a smile, giving off a pleasant light. It was the typical small-town cafe waitress who had the friendly ear and subtle wisdom. "Hi, Jerry." "The usual?" "Hey, Diane." "Yeah, the usual." "How's the job?" "Boring as ever. Picking up piss, drugs, and lab tests. At least all the idiot drivers make it interesting." She smiled while filling out the ticket. "It'll be out soon, hun." Jerry sighed, dreading the 2-hour drive back to Fort Worth. Damn dipshit drivers. Not all idiots. Jerry looked at the old man who sat in the booth next to him. Was he there before? They all can't be idiots. Grandpa said, if you meet one idiot a day, you met an idiot. If everyone you meet is an idiot, you may be the idiot. He was right, you know. Anger's no good. It leads to prisons and a terrible lot in life. The darkness almost hid the distinguished wrinkles and tired eyes. A red, faded ball cap had "Stands Trucking" stenciled on it. I used to be on the giving end of anger. Now I receive it. Constantly. Perplexed, Jerry wondered why a man whose voice had so much wisdom also dripped with sadness. "It's a lonely life," the man said, "but it's my lot. I'll take it, though I hate it." Jerry hunched his shoulders. "Hate what?" "Ever since..." The man shook his head, unable to finish his sentence. Jerry stood and glanced outside, noticing the large, black truck. "That yours?" asked Jerry. The old man nodded lightly. "Yep, been driving it for years. I hope someday someone can take my place." Jerry stood, wanting to get away from the bizarre old man. He rushed to the bathroom, washed his hands, then returned for dinner. "Good," Jerry mumbled, glad the old man had left. Glancing out the window, the truck was also gone. The waitress finally returned with dinner. "So, Diane, what's with the old coot who was in that booth?" Debbie narrowed her eyelids. "Old man? The one in that booth there," Jerry said, pointing at it. Debbie put her hands on her hips. "I haven't sat anyone in that booth tonight." Jerry looked towards the other booth, wondering if he perceived the sitting arrangement correctly. No. A woman and her child sat there, and he remembered them. He pointed outside. Remember, his cap said, "Stands Trucking." "Wait a minute," she said disdainfully. "The old man with the Stands Trucking ball cap?" Jerry nodded, finally taking a bite of his steak. Her voice changed, with a mixture of eeriness and joviality. "Ooh, honey, you've seen a ghost. I don't believe in ghosts. Legend has it, a guy named Stan disappeared on this highway about 20 years ago. His truck had this route to Abilene, but truck and driver disappeared. No one ever found him or his truck." Jerry shook his head. "No way. The guy was here. Probably a new guy for Stan's trucking." "Well, if he was here," said Debbie, "he stiffed a check and my tip. And I didn't have to bus the table." Jerry shook his head while finishing his meal. A large semi sped by, spreading the dry Texas dirt behind it, along with the carbon monoxide. Jerry coughed. Wiggling his keys, Jerry unlocked his small pickup and got in. The last delivery. Finally, he could go home. 2 more hours, then a weekend of rest and recreation awaited him. His wheels launched him onto the lonely, dark highway. Darkness spread in front of him, while the sun's light faded behind him. Jerry's eyelids felt heavy. Too much to eat, he thought. He slapped himself and turned on the radio, trying to wake himself. After singing a few bars, he yawned, preventing any distinguishable lyrics. Quickly, he switched it over to a talk radio station, hoping the host might stir some thought to stay awake. No. The eyelids tried to shut. He jerked his head up and opened his eyes wide. As soon as he finished, they tried to shut again. He snapped his head to attention, hoping to stave off sleep. The right side of his truck vibrated heavily, jarring him awake. Quickly, he pulled off the rumble strip and back into the lane. Shaking his head, he remembered a rest stop about 40 miles down the highway. He hoped to make it. His head dropped again. Jerry's eyes blurred. As his vision narrowed, his mind relaxed, anticipating blissful sleep. Almost there, unable to fight it, his eyes closed. A loud honking noise jolted Jerry awake. Cursing, he pulled his head up and cursed loudly. What the? Headlights closed in. Too bright and too close. They almost blinded him. Back off, jerk. Fully awake now, Jerry saw his speed near 85. The vehicle behind him closed the gap. Able to flip the rearview mirror, he sped up, trying to gain some distance. The truck continued to remain close, as if taunting him. I said, Jerry said, while tapping the brakes. Back off. The loud horn almost hurt his ears. It sounded 3 or 4 times. The truck closed the gap again. What the? Jerry said, while flipping off the driver. He hoped the driver of the vehicle could see him. The loud honking started again, jarring Jerry's eardrums. He wanted to cover his ears, but he feared taking both hands off the steering wheel with this maniac behind him. Seeing the small shoulder, Jerry pulled to the right, He ignored the annoying vibrations from the shoulder grooves. "Okay," he said, while slowing down. "Go ahead and get around me." The vehicle also pulled over, maintaining a close distance to Jerry's bumper. "What the?" He glanced ahead, seeing nothing in the oncoming lane. "It's clear, you idiot. Get around me." The horn resounded again, bellowing louder, as if releasing anger or sheer malevolence. Suddenly, an empty feeling tried to drag his chest down. Sensing harm as the driver's intent scared him, an ominous dread filled his chest. Jerry moved to the empty oncoming lane, hoping the driver would pass him. The truck followed every move. In fact, now it seemed as if the vehicle moved to make sure and get its bright lights into the side rear view mirrors. "Damn it," Jerry yelled. "What the hell is your problem?" He moved back to the correct lane, only to be followed again. Defenseless, Jerry felt nervous and outmatched. Whatever vehicle stalked him, he could tell it was at least 2 or 3 feet higher, like an SUV or oversized pickup. The driver pulled alongside Jerry and flashed its lights at him. It honked again, startling him. "You goddamned idiot," he yelled while rolling down his window. "You're gonna kill..." His voice trailed. The dread froze his mind as he recognized the large black truck from the diner. He barely caught the license plate. EVL 666. Jerry might laugh, but he panicked and hit his brakes hard as the truck swerved in front of him, flashed its brake lights for a second, then sped up. The black truck blended with the night. Brake lights revealed its presence again. Jerry veered to the right while hitting his brakes. This time, all tires left the pavement, and his small truck rolled across the plains. Tumbleweeds and tall grass slammed into his grille and thumped the hood. He crashed through a small wooden fence. Scared, he slowed more. A cow appeared in his lights. Veering hard to the right, Jerry barely missed it. Some trees appeared. Panicked, Jerry pushed the brake all the way to the floor. His truck jolted to a stop. Jerry's chest slapped the steering wheel, while papers, pens, and trash all snapped forward. Dust rolled into his cab, trying to choke his throat and invade his eyes. Even though the air conditioner poured cold air on his face, sweat beaded down his forehead and made his palms slick. He quivered, actually fearing for his life. Nearly 200 yards away, the black truck waited on the shoulder. Dust outlined its bright headlights. Jerry stared at the monster, forgetting his fear and forging hatred. Furious, he grabbed his steel flashlight. Clutching it tightly, he imagined pounding the driver's head until it turned into a bloody pulp. "You goddamn jerk," he said, while gaining anger with every step. "Get out of the truck!" The horn sounded. slightly startling him. "I said, get out of the truck," he said, while hitting the hood with his flashlight. The horn wailed again. "I said," Jerry said, reaching for the door. "Get out of..." The door opened. Fiery eyes leapt at Jerry. The mouth, lined with disfigured, randomly sharpened teeth, howled loudly. Cold, shadowy arms extended and tried to grab him. Jerry slammed the door and fell backwards. Panicked, he jumped up and rushed back to his truck. The shrill horn sounded again, leaving behind a cold, dreaded fright. In a full run, he got back to his car, slammed the door shut, and rolled up the window. "You can't get away from him." Jerry shined the light at the old man. "What the? Who are you? What's going on?" The old man looked as if he was about to cry. "I'm sorry, but he's letting me go, and he needs a new driver." "Get the hell out!" Jerry screamed, while trying to push the old man out of the truck. More confused than scared, Jerry stopped trying to extract the man. "What are you talking about? I thought you were..." An invisible vice clamped on Jerry's neck. Feeling like cold steel, the touch robbed the warmth in his body. In his rear-view mirror, he saw it. The monster's disfigured face looked as if it had been burned. Its eyes alternated between a hollow, black color and a fiery red anger. Its large mouth stretched wide, emanating a deadly hiss. "So long, young fellow. You'll learn, just as I did." Jerry tried to reach for the old man's help. Ignored, he struggled against the powerful, cold grip. It clamped tighter. Soon, everything blurred, then went dark. David stared at the long, forgotten highway while yawning. The road stretched endlessly, fading into a blur in the far distance. Soon, the sun started to recede behind him, trying to blind him in the mirrors. The empty miles obstructed his journey back to Fort Worth. David wondered what happened to Jerry. He was last seen at a cafe several miles back. Then he disappeared. The highway patrol could not find him, nor his truck. David snapped awake as he approached a black pickup truck. It traveled too slow. Needing to get around it, David moved to the left. Unable to see very well, David lightly tapped his horn. The truck moved to the right, then he zipped around it. "Move it, dummy!" Jerry stared into the distance as the small pickup got around him. Tired, he wanted to sleep. Depressed, he wanted to cry. Hungry, he longed for food. His passenger, though, enjoyed making him listen to everyone who passed him. "Jerk! Idiot! You damn fool! Get the hell out of the way!" Every insult echoed perfectly in Jerry's ears. High-speed train. Congressman David Chen found himself where he never guessed he'd be. The dining car on the express. A high-speed train humming through the Hungarian countryside. A patchwork of browns and gray dirty snow flashed by. Abandoned Soviet-era factories passed surreal in skeletal frames. riddled with broken windows and crumbling walls. David's head pounded. Nausea caused him to sweat. He hated trains, but loved his wife, and the Prague conference was over. Just one more meeting, and then he and his wife could take a river cruise out of Budapest. Studying the wine list across from David sat Marcus Blackwood. When the waiter came, he ordered a 2016 Tokaji. The waiter paused and bit his lower lip, avoiding Blackwood's eyes. "We only have a 2018. Your boss promised the 2016, Blackwood said, stroking his precisely trimmed stubble. "I suggest you find it, or else." David noted his old friend, the Blackwood he'd grown up with, the new director of Aid Alliance, had mastered making threats. "Trains have a finite quality," Blackwood mused as they waited for the wine. "Once you're on them, you can't get off." David sipped water from a crystal glass. "But you can change the destination. That depends on who's controlling the switches," Blackwood said. "By the way, how's your Sarah? She starts Columbia in the fall. Is that right? The tuition must be a killer." His stomach rolled over. How did Blackwood know about the Columbia acceptance letter? "She's fine. Elizabeth and I are quite proud of her. I saw you with Elizabeth at the Prague conference." "Vacation?" "Yes. Doubling up the conference with time in Budapest." Blackwood winked. "And a write-off for the entire trip?" Blackwood tossed his right hand. "I was thinking about how we've known each other since the early days. Hell, I was at your wedding. We're warriors, you and I. Into the breach and all that. Well, this warrior is getting tired of the congressional grind. I'm thinking of not running next term. Call it quits." Blackwood laughed, his thick frame tight against his dress shirt. "Say it ain't so." "No, I would quit. But there's more I want to do. A few years, maybe. Then on to the speaker circuit. Or maybe a pack." The waiter returned with a 2016. "We're in luck, Mr. Blackwood." He opened the wine, offered a taste, then served them both. He carefully placed the bottle on the immaculate white tablecloth. "About your upcoming committee vote," Blackwood said. "Aid distribution, of course, is of paramount importance. But with our audit showing only 30 cents on the dollar reaching recipients, there's some pushback we're fighting against." "I've reviewed the proposal," David said. $8 billion might take some time to get through committee. Blackwood adjusted his broad shoulders and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We need to think about this from the 30,000-foot view," he said. "After all, think of the optics. We're supporting democracy, fighting corruption, and aiding fledgling governments who need the world's help." The waiter refilled their wine glasses while the two men looked on. When he left, Blackwood gulped his wine, leaned into the table, and reached out to adjust David's tie. "Our organization believes there's a benefit to a network of partners. We need expertise to walk us through a complex banking system, the regulatory environment. Would you consider getting involved?" A non-profit, hip deep in money laundering, David thought. Excessive compensation, shell companies. A big plunge for a guy who doesn't fudge on taxes. Never has. Never will. I'm a congressman. I can't touch this. You know that, David said. No. Your role would be legitimate, I assure you, Blackwood said. That's what the advisory board is all about. Insurance for, he chuckled, derailments. We want you as a board member after your term ends. It's just, well, in the meantime, we'd like your advice. As a friend. The dulled rush of an opposing train sped by their window. Blackwood steepled his hands in front of him. How's Elizabeth's gallery, by the way? Her art might be worth more once she's passed. Of course, that could be decades away. We certainly don't want any harm to come to her, do we? Blackwood looked down and cut another piece of his steak. David's fork froze on the way to his mouth. He felt anger ripping his insides at the veiled threat against his wife. After slowly setting his fork down, he picked up his wine glass. His hand shook as he gripped the glass, but he gripped harder, and then harder still. The train entered a tunnel. David lost his concentration, diverted by the sudden brightness of the two men's reflection in the window. He stared at the image, but the man in the reflection who looked like him didn't stare back, but shattered the glass with his hand. David stared, transfixed. His reflection picked up a shard with his bleeding hand and wrapped the pointed glass with his cloth napkin. He then reached across the table and slashed Blackwood's throat. Blood splattered on the table as the reflection of Blackwood collapsed. The reflection blanked out as the train shot from the tunnel exit, the horn howling into the twilight. David stared at the wine glass in his hand. Blackwood was no longer across from him. David stumbled from the dining car. He lurched down the corridor to his sleeper cabin, fell into Elizabeth as she opened the door, reeled to the water closet, and retched in the toilet. David, what happened? Elizabeth called through the door. My God! The train approached the outskirts of the city. High rises ahead, pinned to the night sky. The lights in the windows staring down. Soon the train squealed into the station. Elizabeth gripped her husband's arm as they walked to the taxi stand, her eyes riveted on his face. David? Darling? Are you okay? What happened? It's nothing, he said. She held him closer. Are you feeling better? Talk to me. Did you forget anything? David steadied himself against his wife. No, I haven't left anything. As they walked to the taxi stand, he felt in his gut that Blackwood was gone. He realized he'd left him on the train. Some things you can never explain, he thought. But then he felt oddly privileged. He smiled, and even the grime of Budapest tasted a little cleaner. Fate, or science, or the devil himself had stepped in. But not God, he thought. No, this wasn't God. It was another presence who didn't like the alliance, weighing the direction of his daughter's future, his wife's safety, or the price for his looking the other way. "Your hand's bleeding," Elizabeth said. "It looks like a piece of glass." Gridlock of the mind. The 405 stretched endlessly before me, a vein of asphalt pulsing with the dull monotony of brake lights. Every morning, I merged into the current of half-conscious souls, each of us trapped in the same routine, inching forward to destinations we resented. My corporate job barely paid my bills, and my spirit eroded with each passing day. Yet, like a prisoner resigned to their cell, I got into my car every morning, hoping, futilely, that something, anything, would change. Today felt no different. The same stifling air, the same murmur of the radio, the same dull ache pressing behind my eyes. I stared ahead, watching as the red taillights blinked and glowed in a never-ending pattern, hypnotic in their rhythm. I sighed, my hands gripping the wheel. This wasn't life. This was something else, some cruel purgatory where change was an illusion. As I drove, a strange sensation washed over me, an unsettling tug at the back of my mind. It was faint at first, like the nagging feeling of forgetting something important. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Had I left the stove on? No, I hadn't cooked in days. My laptop? No, it was in my bag, thrown onto the passenger seat in my usual morning autopilot. Then what? My phone rang, vibrating against the plastic cup holder. The number flashed on the screen. Unknown. But I knew better. Bill collectors. I clenched my jaw before answering, already bracing myself. "Hello?" A voice on the other end rattled off my name, their tone all business, all demand. "We're calling about your outstanding balance." I exhaled sharply, my frustration boiling over. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I just forgot? I'm sitting in traffic, wasting my life away every single day to make barely enough to survive. And you think I magically have money for you? Tell me, how am I supposed to pay you when I can't even afford to live?" Silence. A pause. Then the collector launched into their script again, as if my words meant nothing. I hung up. Hard. The phone clattered onto the seat, and I turned the music up. Loud. A mix of music and Spotify affirmations played in an endless loop. "You are strong. You are capable," a voice repeated. But the words felt hollow against the weight pressing down on me. I switched back to music, something loud enough to drown it all out. But after a few minutes, I found myself back on the affirmations, searching for something, anything that might stick. "You are in control of your life," the voice insisted. I scoffed, flipping back to music again. The bass thumped through my chest, rattling through my bones, drowning out felt the rage, the helplessness, the crushing weight of it all. I shook the feeling off and pressed forward. But the thought gnawed at me, creeping into the corners of my mind like an itch I couldn't scratch. The traffic slowed, locking me into a dead stop between exits. I drummed my fingers against the wheel, the silence growing unbearable. Something was wrong. Something was missing. The air inside the car felt heavier now, oppressive. I adjusted my rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of my own eyes, shadowed and hollow. Was it always this way? Was I always this way? The weight of exhaustion bore down on me. My limbs felt heavier than they should. Had I slept enough last night? Had I ever slept enough? I closed my eyes, taking slow, steady breaths. But when I opened them, the scenery outside seemed different. The colors muted, the sounds dampened. My vision blurred for a moment before snapping back into focus. But the creeping unease remained. I was losing time. One moment, I was at the interchange, and the next, I was pulling into the parking garage beneath my office building. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady, as if I had forgotten how to walk. The air felt wrong, too thick, too still. I moved through the lobby, the fluorescent lights above buzzing softly, pressing against my skull like a dull migraine. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside. The mirrored walls reflected me back at myself. And for a fleeting moment, I saw something else. A blur, a shadow of someone who wasn't quite me. I blinked, and it was gone. The doors opened to my floor, and I walked down the sterile hallway, my footsteps muffled against the carpet. My hands were cold, my breath shallow. My mind screamed at me to turn back, to run, but my body moved forward, as if caught in the undertow of a dream. I reached my office door, hesitated, then turned the knob. The room was dark. The air smelled of familiarity, of something deeply personal. My breath hitched as I took a step inside, and the walls expanded, morphing, shifting. No, I wasn't at the office. I was home. My bedroom lay before me, unchanged and untouched, as if I had never left. My unmade bed, the half-empty coffee cup on my nightstand, the soft hum of the city outside my window. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. How? I had driven here. I had spent an hour in traffic. I had been walking into my office just moments ago. I turned, reaching for the door, but when I opened it, there was no hallway, just the same road, the same endless stretch of the 405. My hands trembled as I turned back toward my room, only to find it dissolving around me, slipping through my fingers like sand. And then I was back in my car. Traffic had barely moved. The radio played the same mindless chatter, and the clock on my dashboard blinked mockingly. 7:45 a.m., just like it always was. I let out a shaky breath, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My skin felt cold. My pulse raced. What was real? Where had I been? And then the realization hit me. I was late. I was still home, still in bed, still asleep. The panic rose, clawing up my throat as I fumbled for my phone, desperate to check the time, to wake myself up. But when I looked down, my hands weren't there. The car, the traffic, the drive, it wasn't real. I never left my bed. I was still dreaming, or living a nightmare over and over. The death of the artist. People file, though, galleries like they're waiting in the queue at the pharmacy. Ooh, I hear someone say. I like that one. Pointing at a depiction of the artist being ripped to shreds in the war-torn jungles of Vietnam. Like it's a new type of corn plaster she's thinking of taking for a spin. Most people move at a bureaucratic pace, past each frame. Tick, tick, tick. It makes sense if you want to see as much as you can. As the factoid goes, if you looked at each painting in the Louvre for just 30 seconds, it would take over 8 days to see them all. Nobody has that much time. I sit at the other end of the spectrum. I want to find artwork I'm entranced by. And when I do, I offer myself up for captivity. Captivate me, I say, as I look at it loudly close up and quietly from a distance. I look at it in and out of focus. I close my eyes to try and recreate it in my mind. Then I look again. I look at the little corners that the artist probably thought nobody would focus on, or at that figure in the background, doing an impression of being incidental. I sit at bench 40 in the Turner Contemporary, Margate. The painting I'm looking at has been in the gallery's permanent collection for 1183 days, and I've been here for most of them. Not in this spot the whole time. I'm not a lunatic. I do know the security guards by name, though, and they me. Trev, Stu, and Gaz have all added me on Instagram. Gaz has a great side hustle in bespoke, oversized macrame pieces. The gallery is on my way to and from work, and my twice daily visits to this painting have been a helpful pause, an inhale, exhale, as I take my own bureaucratic steps. So I feel like I've put in enough hours to generalize a little bit about gallery goers. The painting I sit in front of is called The Success of Icarus. It's a trans avant-garde painting. That is to say, it's bold and expressive. It tells its story with drama. Icarus doesn't fall. He rises. His arms stretch out to the sun. He is enveloped in white light, and his feathers begin to fall away. but his face is ecstatic. I've always thought he looks like someone at the top of a roller coaster, eyes wide with exhilaration, anticipation, and fear. The sea lies below him, painted in pale, insignificant colors, the waves soft and cushioning. It's 36 by 48 inches, oil on canvas, and an absolute smash hit. I'm not quite telling the truth. It's not trans avant-garde. It's actually a response to the trans avant-garde movement. But now, we're really counting brushstrokes. It doesn't matter. The only place it ever mattered was during my PhD. One gallery goer reads the accompanying text for longer than he looks at the painting. I know it off by heart. The Success of Icarus, Hilary Vale, 1981. Oil on canvas. Vale reimagines the myth of Icarus, portraying him not as a tragic figure, but as a symbol of elation and freedom. With vibrant colors and dynamic energy, this celebratory painting challenges our shared narratives, focusing on flight rather than fall. The artist requested multiple revisions of this piece, leading to legal action by the gallery before the final version was completed in 1988. I check my phone. 8:46, already 1 minute late. I stand up to go. "Cheerio, Nate," says Trev. "Bye," I say, and stop. I step closer to Icarus, narrowing my eyes. Is that... I lean in. Maybe it's because I've been thinking about all the changes Vale made. But I swear, there's something different about it. Next to Icarus's mouth, where the feathers are beginning to scatter amongst the confusion of barbs, there's an unfamiliar shape. It looks a little bit like a teacup. I immediately dive down into the reservoir of Vale knowledge within me, but come up disappointed. I thought I knew every brushstroke, but Vale can still surprise me. I keep thinking about the teacup all the way to work, thinking loudly up close and quietly from a distance. It puzzles me. When I left my PhD, I had 2 criteria in my job search. It should offer me enough spare change for the 1 hokigyo tubs of kimchi, and it should be at least 99% conflict-free. I appreciate that there will always be some disagreements about the correct biscuit to have in the office, which I allowed 1%. I became a finance administrator at the Arts Center. Processing invoices, I thought, would be safe territory. Unfortunately, the artists who work for us don't care about submitting neat and accurate expense claims. And the people who owe us money don't really want to pay up. It's been 3 years. I still haven't really had the heart to make them. So now, I'm failing art itself. I'm on my lunch break when I see it. There, on the top shelf of the cupboard, with the plastic champagne flutes, pumpkin carving kit, and a mug shaped like Dolly's head, is the teacup. My hand shakes as I gently lift it down, cupping it in my palms like a baby chick. It is very delicate looking, with a slightly worn gold rim. The only remarkable thing about it is a distinct blue tinge inside. Again, I search for some sense of recognition, but find nothing. I wrap it in my jumper, then in my bag, out of the way. All afternoon, I'm tempted to Google Hillary Veil blue teacup, but don't. Partly because I want the satisfaction of decrypting the enigma, and partly because I'm worried I'll stray into territory NSFW. When did I discover Veil? I was 14, an age where I loved things absolutely, before caution and caveats got in the way. We were studying a painting by Theodore Redgrave, a friend and artistic contemporary of Veil. Burned bright, died young by suicide. Small oeuvre, huge potential, all lost. My teacher couldn't miss me having a screechingly obvious, pivotal moment in his second period Tuesday art class. If you like this, check out Hillary Veil. There's a lot more to get into, he said, in the same voice he'd use to suggest that I might want to put the lids back on the pens. I did a quick search for Veil's work when I got home. I stayed up all night looking at it. I loved it. Loved the look of it. Loved his insistence on choosing the vibrant. Already at 14, the world's narratives felt familiarly miserable. Veil said, "Fuck that." Veil made me feel more me. I loved the last laugh, in which rainbow confetti erupts from the mouths of diners, laughing in the face of death. I loved Gutterfolk, a mid-'80s depiction of nurses providing hands-on care to an AIDS patient. I loved The Divine Mess, a vivid celebration of celestial chaos. I loved Hercules in Lace, in which the hero, draped in soft pink material, holds a club in one arm and cradles a baby in the other. I loved Sebastian, in which the saint looks too bored with his suffering to feel it. And of course, I loved the success of Icarus. That night, my heart pumping neon red blood through my body, I'd looked up Veil himself. Still alive. Not just that, contactable. I wrote him an email to say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." When I arrive home from work, I put the teacup on the top shelf of my own cupboard. It is hardly in danger from my part cat, part cushion icky, but it feels right to try and keep it safe. All right, Gaz. Afternoon, Nate. Been at the macrame again then? I wave my phone. Can't not do it. He winks and chuckles, not finding that joke any less funny than the first time he told it. I am just about to tell Gaz I've been meaning to put in a good word for him in the cafe exhibition space at the Art Center, when I look at Icarus and see it has changed again. Do you see that? I point next to where the teacup was. What? It looks like a bottle, a tiny bottle, pouring. See it? Gaz wrinkles his nose. Nah, can't see it, mate. You must have looked at this guy one too many times. He makes the sign for crazy. But then again, he says, what do I know? I'm not the art doctor, eh? He slaps me on the back. I pause, my gaze suddenly completely stuck. Well, neither am I. Am I? Close enough, mate. I shake myself out of it. Make myself look him in the eye. Smile. I must remember to speak to Maggie about the cafe space. On the walk home, Gaz's comments pull me back to that moment, that room, 3 or so years ago. There's a certain shade of disdain, which I've only seen from professors. Somewhere along the road to seniority, they all master it. Maybe they teach it at the graduation ceremony. Wouldn't know. Professor Sophie Simons, preeminent trans avant-garde expert with a specialism in Hilary Vale, had printed off my thesis so far. She had not sent me the notes ahead of my supervision. I'd been waiting 2 months since our last meeting. This copy had creased pages, coffee and wine, stains, and as she passed it over, she said, "Sorry, it appears some pages are out of order." I flicked through the first few pages, which had been scrawled on in various hands. What's going on? We sat opposite each other in her poky, umbrous office. It was a room in which I felt a Vale expert should have refused to teach. She perched on the edge of her chair, hands clasped. I felt, last supervision, that our conversation was unproductive. Her expression was concerned. Yes, we argued. A spirited discussion about the Redgrave matter. Any more than that, and I would have referred the matter to the faculty. She raised an eyebrow. Please bear that in mind, she continued. In our world, debate is par for the course. Pardon the pun, if you will. We must all stand up to critical vigor. But there is a point at which that becomes inappropriate. Please, I can't take another attack. You must hear me, Nathaniel, when I tell you that you have reached and passed that limit. Her voice became sharp. I can't tell you how many times I have attempted to dissuade you from your theory that Icarus was painted by a dead man. I think he's a collaborator, obviously not after he died, I said, already exasperated. Please refrain from interrupting me. I don't wish to argue with you. Her tone softened. I do ask that you hear me. Otherwise, we won't have time for you to complete your studies. We'll have to consider deferral, or worse. She smoothed down her skirt and clasped her hands again. I really do want you to consider this, as I'm sure you could be a stellar presence in the trans avant-garde academic community. I've taken the time to ask my most eminent colleagues to read your draft. You will find some intellectual truths here from those who should matter if you want to pursue a future as a Vale scholar. Icarus is not a lost Redgrave. It is a tribute to him. This is a crossroads. There's still time to take another path. I've contacted Vale. I know he'll get back to me soon. The artist is not the canonical interpreter of their work. You know this. It doesn't matter either way. It's futile. She held her head in her hands and addressed him as though he were a 5-year-old who'd used her acrylics to paint the radiator. The work speaks for itself, Nathaniel. I knew as I walked out that it would be the last time we'd speak. At least as professor and student. Even if I picked some other central argument, with this thesis trick, she'd done a bang-up job of preemptively raising my reputation. I'd expected the worst. But even this didn't prepare me for the ambush when I read the notes. Inchoate notion of Vale's context. Gutterfolk is 1987, not 1986. Fundamental misapprehension of Vale and Redgrave's styles. Absolutely, Stephen. Couldn't agree more. You must abandon this notion. And one which simply said, "Ha, I'm so deep in memory, I nearly miss the small bottle. It's peeking out from a pile of discarded food packets by my bins. It's made of thick blue glass with a floral pattern. I have a battle with the cork stopper, but eventually I'm victorious. The inside smells of bitter almonds. I quickly replace it. I know very well what Redgrave drank to kill himself. What I don't know is why it's in my possession. I walk home quickly and put it on the shelf next to the teacup. Vale wouldn't have spent time on grim thoughts. So after Professor Simons and I uncoupled, I tried my best not to ruminate. I hadn't won over the establishment, and the artist had not validated my theory. But no one died, just my ambitions, and the plan for the rest of my life. As I look at Icarus this evening, I get as close up as I'm allowed. I trace my finger in the air over the brush strokes of the impossibly textured sea, a palimpsest. I look at the eyes, which bear a hint more definition than Vale's usual style. They look wider, more fear than exhilaration in them today. As I scan the sky, I see them all. The teacup, the bottle, and holding the bottle, a hand, not Icarus's. I think about my solitary park walk home and bite my nails. "Oh, right, Nate," I hear Security Stu call. "Heard you got Gaz his first exhibition." Maggie had loved the idea of macrame. Apparently, cord is in. He shakes my hand vigorously. "Good lad. About time Gaz got some recognition for his strings." "No problem," I say. "Evening, Stu." I glance at Icarus one last time before leaving. I can't help but see the hand. The little finger sticks out. Jaunty. Camp. I wonder if I'll make it home. I'm really glad I put the bottle of cyanide where Icky can't get it. I'm close to the park when my phone begins to ring. It says unknown number, but I know who's calling. I answer. Hillary Vale? That's right. Hearing such a familiar voice addressing me feels like seeing the eyes of Icarus turn, slowly seeking to fix directly on mine. "You emailed me a long time ago. Sorry it's taken me so long to reply." "You really don't have to," I say. He laughs, and even though now I know what I know, I still feel a rush, an aurora surge within me. I sent you some emails more recently. I could have done with a reply to them, too. I pause. Regrave painted Icarus, didn't he? It takes a while for Vale to reply. He was more of a collaborator. But yes, we made it together. I'm back in the office. I'm telling Professor Simons. I imagine her face, those clasped hands, gripping on to the last moments of her illustrious reputation. I've still got the thesis covered in vicious marginalia. I could publish it. Watch as they all turn on each other until I realize they won't believe you, he says. I imagine myself actually trying to explain the situation and realize that I have no evidence. I am only Mr. Nate Crow, an embittered conspiracy theorist, trying to tarnish the memory of a living legend. Why do you think I've revealed this to you? Keep the trinkets. The police won't want them. I can hear him smiling. You murdered your friend, I say. Why? To live, Nate, he says. I had no choice. Think of my life with him still around. He was always the better artist. It was a fine margin. But there it was. Every award, every exhibition opportunity. He was there around every corner, winning it all. I always thought I could achieve more, do better, outrun him like Atalanta, until he painted Icarus. When I saw it, how remarkable he had made my vision. That's when I knew I'd never be legendary with him around. I was great, but he was greater. And so, his voice became a forced rasp. I needed to be the sun. Why tell me at all? I ask. Nate, it's been 40 years. You've seen from my art how I've struggled to avoid these encroaching shadows, with no way to unburden myself. But now I have you, and you finally have me. He ends the call. In my mind's eye, I see the last laugh, in which rainbow confetti erupts from the mouths of diners, laughing in the face of the figure of death who remains there, temporarily obscured. I see gutter folk, a mid-'80s depiction of nurses providing hands-on care to an AIDS patient. And it suddenly feels like performative empathy. I see the divine mess, a vivid celebration of celestial chaos, where noise drowns out the clarity of truth. I see Hercules in lace, in which the hero, draped in soft pink material, holds a club in one arm, slightly behind him, and which you may not notice, given the baby cradled in the other. I see Sebastian, in which the saint looks bored of his tiresome, endless suffering. I see Icarus's terror when I find artwork I'm entranced by. I offer myself up for captivity. I look at it loudly, close up, and quietly from a distance. I look at it in and out of focus. And there, that's me, in the corner of that park scene, doing an impression of being incidental. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes Things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.